All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Wednesday edition of the Hopkinton Hangout Hour. I'm your host, Jim Cousins, with our co-hosts, Mike Tarosian and Tom Nappy and Matt Clark. Well, welcome to the show. We have an hour of interesting conversation ahead for you. We have Abbie Rosenberg coming on for the first half hour, talking about stress during these times. And in the second half hour, we'll have Doug Scott on, where we are talking about how do we care for others during this time. So the first thing I need to do is welcome Abbie into the show. All right. And hello, Abbie. Are you there? She joins with people join with their audio muted and their camera off. So she should be unmuting her microphone and turning her camera on now that she has joined us. Okay. So while we're waiting for Abbie to unmute her mic and turn her camera on, we're going to start talking about stress and how we have stress during these times of trying to socially isolate.
Oh, there she
Can you
is.
see me now?
Okay. Hi, Abbie. Welcome.
Hi. Can you see me?
Yes, we can, and your friend too.
Oh, my friend. This is how you deal with stress.
That's right. So before we jump into that, which is actually what we're talking about today, I would just like to mention that Abbie is the executive director and founder of the Mental Health Collaborative. And she's also a psychotherapist and a psychopharmacologist. So I think she's got a lot of knowledge about what we're about to be talking about. So, Abbie, how are you doing? Oh, just as you take a drink of
I'm
water.
good. Thank you. I actually showered for the occasion. I'm only kidding. That's an April Fool's joke.
Okay. All right. I just had to play a video for my kids saying that you're not supposed to be in your pajamas all day, even though we're socially isolating. We're supposed to, still get up and get dressed and take a shower and
Yep.
be ready for the day. So, Abbie, tell us a little bit about what you're doing these days. And I mean, with the Mental Health Collaborative and with your career and what your role is.
Okay. Yeah, I took a little bit of a turn when a patient of mine had died by suicide and left me some money. And in honoring him, I started this nonprofit mental health collaborative that we're basing in Hopkinton, starting out in Hopkinton. And really, our mission is to educate and bring awareness to mental health, mental illness. We're starting in the Hopkinton schools. Of course, everything's a little delayed right now. But we really want to teach whole communities about mental health and mental illness.
How long have you been a psychotherapist?
That will give my age away.
Okay.
I would say 30 years at least.
Okay. All right. Have you always been based in the Hopkinton area, or have you come from somewhere else?
No, I came back from UCLA and where I did my graduate work and had a practice in Newton, then in Natick, and then moved it to Hopkinton.
Oh, okay. Now, a lot of times, doctors will specialize in a certain area of treatment or of medicine. And I'm just wondering, do you have a specialty? Would people recommend you for certain issues that a client would be dealing with?
I tend to specialize in depression, anxiety, and I would say really just life transition issues, just normal things about being human.
Mm-hmm.
But it
And
also depression, anxiety, and transitions. That's what I'd say.
okay. And all age groups?
I usually do 16 and up. I don't like I love working with younger kids, but it it really means working with a whole family, and having had just having kids at home, it would mean after hours and having families here. So especially given that my kids were in Hopkinton schools, and if people from Hopkinton were coming. So yeah. And I
Okay.
recently an empty nester, although that didn't last for very long. They're both back.
Is that just due to the pandemic
Yes,
related?
yes, yes. They're doing online classes.
All right. Okay. So actually, while I tee up the next question into our conversation, if you have a chance to tilt your webcam down just a little bit, um, it'll be a better looking shot. Okay.
All right.
That's
That's
perfect.
it is.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Because we don't want to have too much. We call it headroom. We don't want.
Okay.
You know what? I don't know
My
what it
head's
is.
cut off on my computer, but as long as you can see it,
Oh,
that's fine.
I can see it. Everybody else, does it look good on their computers?
Yes.
Love it.
All right. So let's talk a little bit, Abbie, about how the pandemic has affected your practice. I'm sure you're probably doing a lot more Zooming now.
Yeah. Um, well, I mean, I think it's pretty normal to be anxious right now because, anxiety is really uncertainty. So we're all dealing with so much uncertainty that, I mean, anxiety is part of that right now. But in my own practice, which I had cut back from quite a bit because of the new business, I'm taking a lot of calls right now, and just trying to reassure people, trying to give some advice on how to, you know, deal with this stress right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really
Um,
for me the same things that I tell people when they're anxious. I'm just telling more people that maybe haven't been anxious, but they're experiencing it for the first time.
so do you find it's all like I don't know, is anxiety, or is there a different flavor to it now in this era? Is it more like generalized or widespread, or does it make certain things worse, or do you find that anxiety is anxiety?
Well, I think if someone has an anxiety disorder that they're dealing with, or a mood disorder, this time with the COVID-19 is making things worse for them. Their symptoms are exacerbated. But in general, I think we all have a higher um, feeling of anxiety and stress and worry, concern, worry, um, that we can practice the same things that someone that has an anxiety disorder does, or it kind of gives us a new awareness of what are the things we can control right now, which, clearly we've lost a lot of that.
Yeah. Um, so what are you telling people?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit different for everyone, but I myself, I'm a work in progress. I also have had to adjust. We've all had, I think no one is untouched by this. We've all, to varying degrees, have had losses, disappointments. We're missing out. The whole thing with especially teenagers with FOMO, fear of missing out. Well,
Mm.
that is the reality now. Everyone is missing out. Um, so yeah, I think it varies for everyone, but I'm learning myself. I'm trying to help my kids. So I mean, I could start telling you some things I tell people if that would help.
Well, I'd just be interested in what if you have general strategies or tips or
Yeah.
processes that they can be going through.
Yeah. I mean, I think number one is breathing. Uh, and I mean like conscious deep breathing, which really can reset your nervous system and decrease your cortisol levels. So there's just all these different ways to do deep breathing, but I like to do the one that's a take five. I don't know if you can see my hand, but you trace your hand and you do deep breathing. So you would go so through your hand, and you just really like stop your head from these thoughts and start do conscious breathing. So that is really something. I mean, for other people it's journaling, it's meditating, yoga, mindfulness, but I think breathing is a really good thing, especially if your mind is racing and you need to just take that step back. That's a great thing to do. I've been telling people to um, practice kindness, uh, to connect with people in ways that we can, to try and um, make someone smile, make someone's day. You can do something so little that would make someone's day. And I think in general that helping others is a really good way to get out of your own head. Um, I think uh, assuming good intentions of people, which this pandemic has brought out sometimes the not so nice things in how people are judging others, not being as kind as we might like. So really practicing self-compassion, but also empathy and compassion for others, because everyone is dealing with this in the best way that they can.
Mm-hmm.
um, another thing that uh, I tell people in good times as well, but especially now, is limiting the social media and how much news you watch. I mean, we all need to stay informed. And I think it really depends. For some people, social media can be a source of comfort. There's some great things being posted. But for others, again, both in this time and in normal times, it can really cause a lot of increased anxiety and the comparison game. Look what their family does during this. How come we're not doing that? Um, a feeling of I'm not enough, I'm not doing enough, and those are all not good for you.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the reaction someone's getting from social media, stay off of it, limit it. Other people will say, "Wow, that's a great idea. I want to do that," but they're not playing that comparison game. So
Yeah.
that's a biggie. I think sleep, getting enough sleep, eating well, those are things for the most part we can do. A huge thing is getting outside and getting exercise, getting some fresh air. At least the people we can that can do that. And connecting. I mean, connecting is huge. The more
Yeah.
we can connect with others in ways that we're able to, uh, the better off I think we'll all be feeling. And that's what we're really missing.
So now that's really interesting, right? Connecting. How do we do that now?
Kind of like probably what we're doing now, Zoom. That I think that's probably the only stock that's going up is Zoom. Well, that and Amazon. Yeah, finding some levity. That's another thing. Laughing. I'm trying to laugh every day. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Not always easy.
Right.
But what was your question?
Actually, Mike, did you have something you want to say?
Well, yeah, one of the things that connecting like
Oh
this,
yeah.
everyone's doing this here, but I just heard a report this morning from the telephone company. Phone calls are being made now, not just texting. And the newest trend is letter writing.
Really?
It's amazing to think. I don't know if I can. Is the post office even open to get stamps? I don't know, but
Yeah, they are.
uh, so I'm thinking time to write the letters, time to make the phone calls, stop just texting everyone, see how they're doing, and make a phone call.
I agree. I think there's so many ways to connect. Um, and it's hard. It's hard when, but it makes us realize how much we just text and don't hear a voice. So there's some small silver linings here, and what we can realize about ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. It's I think that's really wise to think about that, because sometimes we can just get all caught up in our worry and in our like watching the news too much and just getting all wound up. And how can you reconnect with yourself and, as they say, center yourself and um, find peace within you if you're so constantly looking at the turmoil that's going on right now?
Yeah. I mean, I also think just this seems so unending right now, but to remind yourself that, this is temporary. It might seem like it's not never ending, but we will be able to hug people again and see people and get back to that crazy busy lives that many of us live. And maybe this will help us to take that step back and write a letter or call someone versus texting.
Yeah, yeah. Just a lot of the simple things. Although, I mean, a lot of the people are saying go outside and take a walk, and um, I was just reading today that this isn't a medical thing for me that you know they think that 6 feet may not be enough, um, and you may need to separate more. So, I mean, where does it end? Like where? I don't know. I guess we just have to wait until the science, I guess, can figure out what's safe to do and what's not.
Yeah, I think you hear a lot of different things too, and I, we really can't speculate. I think that another thing that I just thought of is really asking for help if you need it, and kind of knowing what those signs and symptoms are if you or someone else that you really care about is having increased anxiety or depression that persists.
Hmm.
Um, that it's really important to get help and to know what those signs are. And um, I have to mention it because it's my job, but feelings of that your life isn't worth living or hopelessness. I mean, this is not going to cause that, but if someone is having those feelings and they have a medical disorder, then it's important to get that person help and to ask. To people want to be heard. People want you to ask about how they're doing.
Mm. What if a person doesn't have doesn't have a therapist or a psychotherapist that they're actually already dealing with? What if they're trying to isolate and stay safe, and all of a sudden some of these feelings are starting to happen? Um, I don't know. I mean, do you do they just Google therapists around them, or do you have any recommendations for how people can connect to help when they're home alone?
Um, I mean, I think if it's not as severe and is situational, then churches, friends, family, hopefully someone has that around them. But if you need professional help and you're aware of that, people are accepting new patients doing telehealth. It's hard to find. I know I've talked to some people that I don't know because they reached out. Um, yeah, I mean, I think everyone's just doing the best they can. And there are therapists out there, and there are therapists that will take new patients during this time.
Hmm. Isn't this like a notoriously difficult area to find professional help in, the area of mental health?
Yeah, it really, well, it is. It's a problem. Um,
Mm.
Hopkinton just adopted this service for residents called Interface, and I haven't had a lot of feedback as to how it works, but supposedly if you call the number and you say you're a Hopkinton resident, they will find you a couple choices of people that will take your insurance, or that will, if you want a male, female, what location, that kind of thing. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, I mean, so that's a really great service for people who need help, I hope. Um,
Right. So switching for a moment here, I thought uh, that I believe Hopkinton signed up with the Mental Health Collaborative to um, run your program.
yeah,
Was that going to be for this year, or was it planned on starting next year?
it's planned for next fall, and we were scheduled in May to train teachers on the curriculum that they will then be delivering to students. Um, but that is, I have, yeah, I can't even ask them right now because they're so busy trying to
Hmm.
figure out online learning and what their next steps are. So it's right now it's delayed, but I'm really optimistic that we can still put that in effect for the fall. It will just, may mean training them in August.
Right. I mean, Abby, we have to be back by the fall.
Oh, I know. And I mean, this educate mental health, but what we do is mental health literacy, which is helping people understand and have knowledge about mental health, just like they do about, other health. And it's weird, we spend so much time helping our kids, for example, learn how important dental health is and, hygiene, but we really don't talk a lot about mental health, and I'm hoping that this trend is to change that, and that mental health
Mm.
collaborative will help to change that stigma and that lack of conversation about our mental health, which, how can we ignore the brain? The brain is one of the most important organs that controls everything.
So that's exactly right. And when you just talking about stigma, um, so this is geared towards middle school students, and the focus is on educating them about the existence of mental illness and trying to remove the stigma from it.
Yeah, the core of our programming, in the four kind of pillars of mental health literacy, let's see if I can remember them, are decreasing stigma, increasing knowledge of mental health disorders and knowing their treatments, um, increasing mental health promotion. So how to be your best self mentally, um, and knowing help seeking efficacy. So knowing where to get help, when to get help, what to
Hmm.
expect when you get there, etc. So that is in our program is yes, geared toward middle school kids, but also parents, also members of community like you guys, and hopefully our real mission is building resilient communities through mental health education and awareness. So we're really hoping we can impact whole communities.
I find that really interesting because, and at the risk of dating myself as well, back in the old days, it was really different. And, I maybe people would say, well, it wasn't so much stigma, but it was just not politically correct, and people like were able to joke more about things, and it was just more freer like that. um and I think there's a growing awareness of what actually is a joke and what actually is not a joke. When does humor turn into mocking, and when does your attitude towards something cause someone else to distance themselves, or fade away more. um do you have any sense in that, like, how things are going from your perspective, like just generally in the world at large, as far as mental health stigma?
I feel like we're chipping away at it, and I think that education is going to change that even more. But the media still has some negative impact on mental illness. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's mixed, and there's people that won't open their eyes to it until it hits them in the face, which I think we all are impacted in some way. But um, I'm just chipping away one town at a time, hopefully, and spreading this
Hmm.
word. It's really people are really undereducated about mental health and mental illness unless they I don't want to generalize that, but for the most part, I think it's something that we have a lot of room for growth.
Yeah, I just, to be totally honest, I remember years ago, I would see where people were starting to say certain terminology was offensive, and it made it like, stigma, and it made it more difficult for people. And I was thinking, well, we're just changing the name. Is that actually changing the general attitude? But I haven't really thought that way for a long time, so I'm wondering if that was actually a problem. Like, we look at sports teams had to have to change their logos, and the caricatures that they use. um does that really take it away, or does it move it to something else? I don't know. To me, it kind of seems like this world is generally drifting into a more accepting, inclusive society. And do you think that's just my optimism, or do you see evidence of that too in your life?
I see evidence of it, but then you see something that is totally on the contrary, and you think, "Wow." So I think that pretty big range, but I do think in general people are more aware of varying degrees of mental health and mental illness, and considering it an illness.
Mm-hmm. Um, oh, by the way, I should just quick aside. I should say, hi, Marilyn and Lou. They are actually tuning in and watching us online, and just let me know. So happy for that. Um, and the stuff that you're doing in the middle school, um, do you see it being applicable to the general population? Do you have a point where you think you will include, I don't know, parents or community members or some other groups in your education?
Definitely. That is part of our, if you look at our website, we have school-based programs and then community-based programs. So we want to get this word out in this education to as many people as possible of all different age ranges and community groups, etc. But um, it's right now everything's a little bit delayed, so it's a little disappointing. But in the scheme of things, it's not as disappointing as what other people are dealing with. So it will be there waiting for us when we get out of this pandemic.
Right. And is it middle school first and then move into the community? Is it a
I
progression?
think wherever the opportunity is, we'll jump on it. So we have all the programming, we're ready, and I think we're starting in schools because schools are a great place where you can reach kids all at once and you can reach parents too. So schools are kind of a natural place to give education,
Mm-hmm.
and we can reach a lot of people. What we don't want to do is reach only the people that have experiences with mental illnesses. We want everyone to get this education because it's really a right of everyone to have it.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. What about high school?
Well, Hopkinton is easy because we only have one district, so all eighth graders, go to eighth grade, and then they stay the same class for high
Mm.
school. Um, we we will do also ninth and 10th grade.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but really in Hopkinton, we only needed to pick one grade, and we thought that by high school, kids are a little more closed up, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
learning about stuff that's could be embarrassing or stigmatizing.
Okay, so you thought about that. What about younger? Because I mean, I know middle schoolers are awesome. It's also a very turbulent time where everybody's growing and everybody's like having feelings and really kind of figuring out who they want to be. Um, did you look at or consider younger grades before they reached middle school?
Well, we adopted this program from an existing organization based in Canada, and it's
Mm-hmm.
meant for 8th through 10th grade. So I think people are a little hungry for younger ages, but I also think that people are doing a great job with younger ages in terms of um, empathy and sensitivity toward others, which is more of a younger. I think at a younger age, hopefully they don't need to know specifically about mood disorders or other things
Mm,
like that. Um,
right.
so I
Okay.
think it's the maturity level or developmentally, it's where it needs to be, but I do think there's room for education at all ages.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, listen, I can't even believe. Oh my gosh, this half hour flew by, Abby. So thank you for spending the time with us, and um, I hope that you come back and we can talk more about um, things to do in this stressful environment.
Yeah, anytime. And thank you so much for having me and also for everything that HCAM does for Hopkinton. It's really, I feel very proud to live here and very grateful to all of you. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
And bye. All right. Next up, we're going to have Matt jump in with a little quick programming update before we go into our next. So, Matt, what's
Hello.
happening on HCAM?
Well, we have a few great things coming up in the rest of the week. Tomorrow on our hangout hours, we have Evan Bishop and Alan Keller, the principals of the high school and the middle school, followed by Dr. Carol Kavanaugh, the superintendent. And then on Friday, we have the chair of the Hopkinton School Committee, Mina Barath, and we're also going to be talking about what shows we're binge watching. And if people want to get in on that, they can email us at studio@hcam.tv, or they can check us out at hcam.tv/hangout.
All right, that sounds great. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, no problem.
And we're going to move on into our second half hour, where the topic of this half hour is, what are we doing for each other? And we're going to be talking with some people who are actually doing some things for other people, and just kind of having a conversation about what we're seeing go on in our community during this time. So joining us right now, we have Doug Scott, who is an SML of the BTE department at Hopkinton High School, Business Technology and Engineering. And we also have John Ritz, who has been volunteering some of his time working with them on a project. So, Doug, John, welcome to the show.
Howdy.
Hey, Jim, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. Hey, thanks for taking the time to be with us today.
Okay.
All right. So, I know a little bit about what you're doing, and I can see some of what you're doing behind you there. But can you tell us what you've been working on down in your basement?
Well, it's not just me. I'm doing this here, but we have John and some other folks that have joined our team throughout Hopkinton, and actually it's grown quite a bit. We have about, I think as of this morning, about 72, 73 members from here to, we actually have a lady in Hawaii that's doing it. But we're 3D printing a component for a headband, and then a plastic sheet attaches to it to make a face shield. So it's a simple face shield that someone can wear to protect themselves if they're coming into close contact with somebody with COVID. So, and this all started out with, there was an all call in Massachusetts for people to get on board and do things like this. So started toying around with it, and next thing you know, we had a meeting as a group in Hopkinton with the police, Board of Health, and our school nurse, and we took some advice, and then we ended up partnering up with Mashpee High School, and between us and Mashpee, we played around with some different designs, and the Cape Cod makers down in near Mashpee came up with a nice design that we've been using. And John is one of our punchers. We have basically a 3-hole punch sheet that matches onto the design. So John punched out 591 sheets today. It's crazy.
And then did you reward him by dropping off some more blanks?
Well, I told him I was going to drop a stack off, and I don't think he understood how many. We ended up with the middle school was very nice. Believe it or not, we're using like old transparency sheets from the schools, and nobody really uses these anymore. So we're shocked that we keep finding them. They're just old in the closet, just sitting around. So at the middle school, they came up with, I think it was 10 boxes of 100. So they came up with 1,000. So I was nice to you, John. I didn't give you the whole stack, but I gave him quite a bit. But it's actually been pretty good. We have some students involved, residents in town, and we just filled up. John was just exchanging emails with me. We just filled up the Board of Health with what they needed for now. Hopefully that's enough. And John just contacted the Medical Reserve Corps, and we may partner up with them and some other folks to dole these out.
So, John,
I contacted Lisa Jackson. I used my HCAM contacts and Trails Club to pull her in, and she's excited about it.
Good.
So this is so interesting because Doug Scott is a great guy, and John Ritz is a great guy. But it's kind of like Star Trek and Star Wars. You usually don't see them together. So, John, how did you find Doug and get involved?
Must have been somewhere on social media, either Twitter or Facebook. Doug was putting out notices about the project, and I said, well, send me the info. I'll see what I can do.
Well, that's what you get. now you're punching sheets. Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So is this the first time you and Doug have met?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of passed each other at different times, but never formally worked on anything before together yet. Yeah. So it's been nice. It's been nice in that way. I've met some new people in town, and everybody wants to do something, and that's where it kind of started. Where when we ended up changing the design and going with the one that the Cape Cod makers made, was the fact that you could 3-hole punch, because we had a lot of people say, I don't have a 3D printer, but what can I do? And then, well, do you have a 3-hole punch? And most people do. So we went with that. And it's been nice because we got people like John and some other folks that are willing to give their time. So it's been good.
Right. Do you assemble the two pieces before you pass them on?
No, we actually, John and I haven't even seen each other. No, we just, we deliver them to whomever, and it's simple enough where, you just take, like the sheet, you just take it, you take the hole, and then you just pop it onto the peg that's on the mast, and then it assembles, and that's it. So it's a pretty simple process. The only thing that I do here is, and the students and other folks in town are doing, is we'll print out the pieces. I have smaller printers, so we print out in 2 pieces. So I glue those together, put a rubber band on the back, and then they get paired up with a plastic sheet later.
Oh, okay. All right. So actually, Doug, when you were first talking, you were saying things like an all call went out, and we settled on this design. Who is that? Who is the we? Where's your network?
Well, the all call was, I'm on a mailing list for Mass General, and Dr. Slavin, he's the head of Mass General. He sent out an all call to Massachusetts, and it was pretty widely publicized that they were looking for protective equipment for anybody that was working in hospitals or wherever. And so then I reached out to 2 students, and the school nurse, Sarah Patterson, reached out to my aunt, who's a retired nurse, OR nurse, and Board of Health, police, fire, and we had a meeting online, and we took the advice of the nurses, went along with some guidance from them, and then we started kind of poking at different designs and landed upon the one that we have now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I actually see them. They're running right now, right behind you.
Yeah, you want me to take you on a tour, Jim? I'll take you.
Oh, let's do that.
Yeah, this will really spice up the show, huh? Okay. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, the crazy part of teaching from home right now for me is, I have to have some equipment to work and do things that the kids produce. So a lot of the kids do CAD design, so they do projects and send them. But these top printers here right now are designated for 3D printing the actual components for the shield. And then over here is a little assembly station, which is simply some portions of shields that are printed out, 3-hole punches, and I've got some plastic sheets. And then underneath, I have a UV cabinet that you would store goggles in a science classroom or a shop. And, we work cleanly. I just tweeted out a picture that John sent me of John was, he looked like a bandit. He had a mask on and he had gloves and he was stamping sheets. So, but after that, I take the pieces I have, excuse me, and I throw them into the UV cabinet just to give them a little extra. Oh yeah, there's John's picture. Yeah, see?
Yep. Thanks, Tom.
Looks like a train robber. So
My other life.
yeah, right. So
Doug, I had a question for you. How many 3D printers are involved in this project? Both, how many do you have there, and how many others are there out there?
Well, in here, I have 8 that I can run at once.
Wow.
So 8 small machines that I can run at once. These are the ones that we use in the classroom at school. But nationally, we're in the hundreds. I know we picked in Minnesota alone. We broke 100 printers yesterday through a buddy of mine named Mark Westlake. He's out there. Cape Cod's buzzing through. Mike Looney at Mashpee. He's one of the other main guys in this, and then we have a scattering of people all over the place. I'd have to look back at the roster that's in there, but it's pretty wild. But we're in the hundreds of 3D printers that are out there right now. Yeah.
Wow, that's great. Hey, we're live and we are a multimedia empire. So we actually got a question that came in on our YouTube comment. So, Tom?
Yeah.
We did, and I'll just throw this up. It's kind of showing some of the process. Doug posted this on Twitter the other day. But the question is, if we have a 3D printer here in Hopkinton, how can we get involved?
This is really easy. We made it easier as we went, because as it started out, like John got in early. It was pretty much we were doing everything through email, but it got to the point where I couldn't really keep up with the emails anymore. And the guy out in Minnesota, same thing, and Mike down in Mashpee. So he said, okay, we're going to post it onto a page. So I have a domain that I use with the social media that I have. And it's just mrscottbot.org. So Mr. Scott Bot, all one word, and then .org. And if you go there, the page will come up. You click on it, and it'll take you right in where you punch in your information to join the team roster, and then it takes you right into the instructions and everything how to do it. Yeah. So that's an easy way to do it. So if you have a 3D printer and you want to join us, do it.
Yeah. This is just really cool. And Mike had an interesting take on that. Mike, what were you just thinking?
I was thinking when you mentioned a call for action, this reminds you of the days of entering World War II when scrap metal was needed to build ships and so forth, that people got together and did what they could to support the effort against that war. And as the CDC like to call it, they say this is a war. So I think you guys are doing a heck of a job.
Yeah, it is. But I always think, like the greatest generation. Someone is talking about that recently. I said, well, I hope we're just okay, because I think what they did was like monumental, and what we're doing is we're doing our part. But I mean, that was, I think, real extreme. Yeah.
Oh, exactly. I mean, it's on the same spirit. And
yeah,
and
same spirit. Yeah.
the one question that I did have, the transparent plastic that you're using, was that for those old overhead projectors?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I just want to check.
Yeah.
out.
And
Wow, where did you find that?
I swear to you right now, I can't believe they still make them, but they do. And the really good part is a lot of people we found, like the middle school, one of the science teachers contacted the principal and said, "Hey, I've got a bunch." It turned out he had 10 boxes of 100, and they were sitting in the back of the closet, and they just kind of got ignored for years, So that stuff is still out there, just sitting around. So, this will probably be the last go around, I think. I don't know who else is going to be buying them after this, but hopefully nobody.
Maybe we get Avery to make some more.
Yeah, I know. We've been buying Highland 901s. I can't remember. I think it's a 3M product, and
That's as I've been punching them. I've discovered I do have some favorites on the.
What's your favorite, John? What's your favorite brand?
Right now, the Highland 901 is far away. That's
the superior. The superior transparency sheets.
I like
yeah, you can tell the difference between those and the no names. Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah.
Hey, so if someone has a 3D printer, how long does it take to print one mask?
It takes me about a little over an hour. To print out a mask. I'm printing it with the least amount of infill that I can. So it's fairly hollow. It's strong enough, but I'm not filling it with dense material. So it prints pretty quick, about an hour or so. And so usually what I'll do is I'll run them all day. And anytime that you 3D print, you should have some ventilation. So I have my bulkhead door open and a screen door. And I have a fan blowing out. And then the other trick to that is I'll print, throughout the day. And at night I'll set a timer on my machines, let them print like one more time, get up in the morning, start them up again. And from Friday to last night, I was able to put together 72. So 72 pieces, 72 headbands, and then those will match up with the pieces that you punched, the plastic sheets. Yeah.
Any trouble finding the raw material?
No, because I mean, as far as 3D printing material, I'm using what we had in the classroom. We've had some people reach out on mrscottbot.org. There's also a few emails on there. If people want to like directly ship materials to one of the makers, they can. So we could send you another 5,000 sheets, John, and you can go nuts. Or I'm using kind of fancy sewing elastic right now, but eventually I'll just run out of that, and I'll just use, I have some non-latex rubber bands that I can use, that we use in robotics. So we're just using what we have and just going through it. There's the PLA material that we have isn't the strongest or most flexible. There's PETG, which is out there, which is more durable, but the reality is, I think anybody that's been in a hospital before, that if this actually gets into contact with somebody that is sick, this is going in the trash right after. It's probably a one-time use deal. If you might be able to reuse the headband a few times and wipe it and then throw a new sheet on, but eventually they're gonna get tossed. So.
Hey, I had a quick question. John, I hope this isn't like a really obvious question, but why were you looking like a bandit when in that picture that you were punching the 3 holes in?
Well, there are some specific instructions for wash up, wear gloves, and wear some face protection. I don't have a face mask. I don't think anybody does these days anymore. So I found something to cover my face. And then I went with a plastic work table that I could wipe down with, antibacterial, make sure that was clean. And I had a pair of hand-me-down scrubs from my son. I figured these days, I'm sort of wearing the same jeans every day for weeks at a time, and figured I should probably be wearing some clean. So it's all just about making sure the work area is as clean as possible. And the product, I'm sure the product's can be sterilized once it gets out there, but deliver it as clean as possible.
Yeah, and one of the things that we do that John knows about too is we bag everything and we date it, and we have a little information sheet that we provide, and then when that sheet is attached to the bag, the person that's opening it knows the date. So right now CDC says 72 hours is kind of like the safe time for the virus to die off. So if someone gets this bag and they wait the 3 days, it's just a nice kind of safety check. So we'll do things as best we can.
Yeah. Listen, this question has been bugging me. So Tom Nappy is my news director, but in his heart and soul, he's a sports director. So I'm going to put him on the spot here, and I'm going to ask him, Tom, do you recognize that logo on Doug's cap?
I believe that is a Quebec Nordiques hat.
It is. Yeah, it is.
That is awesome.
Yeah, it is Quebec Nordiques. Yeah.
Were you a Nordiques fan?
I liked the Nordiques growing up. Yeah, they were good. They were a good team. They were good.
They should bring them back.
Yeah, well, they're trying up there. They actually a couple years ago they used to attend all the different games as a group, and they'd all wear blue, and they try to petition the league to get they should have a team, but I'm sure they will. Yeah.
All right, Tom. You never let me down when it comes to sports.
I try.
Yeah.
I knew the answer to that.
Did you? Oh yeah. All right. So so just curious for anybody. Has anybody seen anything else where people are looking after each other. I know, like on my street, we have a group email. So people have offered to go shopping or try to get some puzzles for people who are trying not to go out or anything like that. And also to start it off, since we have this picture, Tom also has a picture of a select board member, John Coutinho, who was recently out and about helping deliver some supplies to St. Vincent's. So
wow.
that was nice. Anybody else come across anything?
Well, Jim, I just I was at work yesterday and I had a person drop off a case of mask at the Ashland Fire Department
Oh, wow.
for us.
That's pretty good.
Wow. N95s?
No, they weren't, but it was still, it'll do the job.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, we can't all have N95s, but it was nice that they were thinking of us, and they've been great. I mean, they've been checking on us. They know they can't come in the building or really talk to us or whatever. I mean, they've been bringing us pizza. Someone dropped off Framingham Baking Company pizza, and that's
Mhm.
like gold to us. We love Framingham pizza. But yeah, they've been great with the support, the phone calls, the letters. They've still sent cards. Everyone's been great supporting the first responders.
Yeah, that's really good. I love seeing, like just pictures of simple things too, where people put, books at the end of the driveway so that if, people want to grab a book as they're walking by, just easy, simple stuff like that can really be significant in this world.
Hey, Jim, I just got great news from John's contact earlier, Lisa Jackson, that they have 3 hospitals connected to the MedCorps in Hopkinton that are looking for as many shields as they can. So, we did a good job and we filled up the Hopkinton Board of Health, but it looks like, we'll keep pushing these forward. Yeah. So that's
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna go to mrscottbot.org and see if I can contribute, because
you could
it's
you
just
could you can be
good.
you can be an outlaw like John Ritz.
There we go.
Yeah, he's got all the stuff though. He's got gloves and he's got antibacterial wipes.
Oh, I'm sure he can set you up, Jim.
But no Lysol. You can't find Lysol to save your life.
No, I know nobody. Yeah, you do the best you can. That's all.
Lysol and Purell, forget about it.
No,
So
Doug,
actually, go ahead, John.
Doug, you were saying that if we're ordering supplies, avoid getting something that's going to be delivered in late April. You're expecting the people who make the real shields are going to ramp up and start producing these?
I hope so. I mean, that's the hope. I mean, it's funny, you get online and there's a lot of engineering people that are getting involved in these projects, and everybody gets into like whose design is better than whose and all, and it's like I don't really care. We have 3 designs available that people can use through our mrscottbot.org. You can use any 3 of the. We don't really care as long as you make something, and so it's pretty wild that people get caught up in that. What was your question again, John? What was your original question?
Are you expecting the
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah,
real industries that make these to
yeah.
ramp
Well,
up?
funny because like Bauer Hockey just started last week up in Exeter, New Hampshire. They started producing. I was talking to somebody I know that works at Ford out in Michigan, and they're starting to make face shields. And some of the car companies I know have been contracted to try to figure out the ventilator systems. So everybody's trying to make these things. Our hope is that somebody can start producing these at a high rate of speed and of higher quality so that we get displaced. I mean, let's face it, as good as you are, John, there's only so many we can make, right? I mean,
It's been fun seeing the other industries that are repurposing. breweries are
breweries. There's
way other things to make. So
I do work with a group in Cambridge in the summer, and it's through MIT. And there's a young guy that has a clothing line, and it's called the what is it called? Ministry of something. I can't remember. I'll look it up for a second. And Ministry of Supply. That's what it's called. The Ministry of Supply. And they have a special 3D printer that they use to make like this kind of athletic dress wear. And the kid just converted over his line to making masks because the mesh is fine enough that it's equivalent to an N95. So yeah, it's pretty wild to see people changing over their lines, you know?
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Tom actually has a picture of some of your competition that he's going to share with us now.
Oh,
This is
Oh, that's from the article that you were mentioned in, Doug.
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
This is Jason. This is from the Metro West Daily News. It's Jason Homer, the director of the Morse Institute Library in Natick. He's removing a cap from the 3D printer.
Yeah, so he's making masks. So he's making this filtered mask that you can make. And they definitely have their place. What we found out through the nurses when we talked to them, and then also through some doctors that posted online, the advice of, to a layperson was make shields, because unless you get that mask to be exact fitting to the face, and you get it so that the filtration is correct, you may do more harm than good. So we're kind of making what I would call a dum-dum device. It's a simple shield, just a sheet of plastic between you and somebody else. But yeah.
All right. So we're coming to the end, but I had a couple quick things I wanted to ask. You were talking about how you're making it with little infill. I'm assuming to conserve resources, keep
Yep.
it light, keep going. Is everybody using your design? Are some do you all use different designs?
It depends. Like in our area, in Hopkinton, we've gone with what we call the Looney model. It's named after Mike Looney from Mashpee. He's the one that gave it to us. A guy named Jesse from Cape Cod Makers made it. We chose that one because you can do the 3-hole punch, and but it really depends on the resources you have. That works for us, and as long as we stick to that together, like me and John and a whole bunch of people, we can do that. Other people, like my friend Mark out in Minnesota, there's another model called the Prusa model. He's doing the Prusa model, and he's actually his shop's available to him. He's in there alone, and he has laser cutters, and he's cutting the plastic sheets and everything. He can do it that way, so that model is good for him. So it just depends on what you have,
Cool. All right. Last question to John. John, Doug mentioned that he can bang out one of these things in an hour. How many shields can you punch in an hour?
an hour, heck,
Oh yeah,
no limit.
All right. Hey, guys, thank you so much for coming on the show. But more importantly, thank you so much for what you're doing to help the people who are helping to keep us healthy in this pandemic.
Give it a go. All right. Thanks all. See you.
All right.
I know.
All right. I'll be talking to you both soon. You guys are awesome.
Say hi to Percy.
Thanks. All right. And thank you for tuning in for this hour of Hopkinton Hangout Hour. And I invite you to come back tomorrow. We'll have a brand new live hour. So everybody on the team, thanks so much for being here, and catch you next time.